Welcome everybody to the few of you who are here. I kind of just dropped this stream out of nowhere without any sort of advanced notification to any of you. So guys who are here, ooyap, thanks for tuning in. It's been a crazy week, but I figured, you know what? All right, I got a little bit of time right now. Let's just go live and let's get some thoughts down because I think I still have some useful things to get into. So this won't necessarily be the longest stream, but I'm hoping that you still get some value out of it. And let's just start with what's been happening. All right. So last Sunday, Eagles won the Super Bowl. Oh, right. I'm actually from the Philly area, and so obviously our whole area is majorly pumped on that. But this isn't a football channel, and so why am I bringing this up? We're talking about self-development here. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it triggered a thought for me around a conversation that I recently had with a member of our Frontline Man Dojo, which is like our premium masculine development community. And what he was talking about was like when he says that he goes to like he wants to increase his connection with the other guys, in his life, his friends, his family members. And one of the things that they like to do, obviously, is get around and watch sports because, obviously a lot of guys like to do that. But he mentioned how, like, when he does this, he feels like he has trouble getting into it because this guy, he's, very self-improvement minded. He's always interested in conquering his goals and that sort of thing. And when he gets around other people just doing kind of regular dude stuff, he feels like, it's not quite on his level. He's not super interested. It doesn't really have anything to do with the bottom line that he's pursuing. And, I understand that, right? It's very easy to dismiss sort of cultural gatherings like watching sports as something beneath you or not really worth your time and that sort of thing. But the thing I had to point out to my friend here is that his goal was to connect with people. Right? And in order to do that, what you have to do really is like you have to be able to step out of your own hyper-focused, selfish story, which is all about you and your goals, and step into a shared story where kind of you and the other person have something to care about. And so what does this have to do with the Super Bowl? Well, for me, as I cheer on the Eagles, I watched literally 0 seconds of the Eagles season. Like I don't even have cable. Like I can't even watch it, and I just kind of don't care to because sports, I get sucked into them. It's not that I don't like them. It's just that they're a lot of time and attention for me, and so I don't really pay attention because if I do, I'll get sucked in and I'll be spending hours like following everything, listening to the blogs and all that kind of stuff. Like I have a very addictive personality, and so I have to be aware of when I can like things a little bit too much. And so like even though I hadn't followed the Eagles at all, I barely knew the names of the players, like I didn't know any of the plot lines or anything, I was still in there watching the game, yelling at the TV, talking with my family around me, and it was a blast. And this is an important skill that every guy needs to have. And it's being able to do this is kind of like the prerequisite to not becoming like a self-improvement nerd who is just like, oh, if I don't have people who are constantly grinding and, reaching their apex potential in every single possible way and min-maxing their entire life, then I can't be around these people. They're just beneath me, right? There's this kind of superiority that I think, tends to occur when someone gets really into self-improvement. And, he kind of saw where I was coming from. And it's like, yeah, just chill out, learn how to just enjoy the thing. And the point of me getting into the football game, it wasn't because football matters to my life or I even really care about it. It was because it was something fun to do with my family. It was an event. It was a thing, right? And that gave us an excuse to connect. And this is how like you got to be able to do this with people if you want to be able to build connections, right? Like sometimes like having a beer by yourself, that's one thing, arguably maybe even a bad thing. But if you go out and you have a beer with a buddy and you catch up and you talk about life and all that kind of stuff, well, that could be an incredibly gratifying thing. And so you got to be, able to step into that sort of wavelength if you want to be able to connect with people and increase your social fulfillment, as it were. Now, he countered with a really good point, by asking me, what do you think of this idea that you're really like the sum of your 5 biggest relationships? Because that whole idea is around like, okay, if you're not surrounded by people who are as driven and focused and on point as you are, then you're going to be holding yourself back. And so you need to be surrounding yourself with all these elite people. Now, is that great? Is networking powerful? Do the people around you have influence on you? Absolutely. But I also think that the attitude that inspires is kind of bullshit. And it's like, frankly, like insulting. Like, I've got really good friends and really good family members who you wouldn't consider massively developed. All right. And I love these people and I love spending time with these people. And that whole mentality of like, oh, you're defined by your 5 biggest relationships. It kind of just makes it feel like, you got to be cutting people out of your life left and right if they're not like, trying to fire at the same level you are. And if you do this, then you're going to live most likely a rather shallow and empty existence, because people are more than just like where they're at in the ladders that they're climbing. Okay. And so being able to sort of give yourself permission to relax, not judge people, just being a regular person doing regular things and connecting with people around that, that's a hyper skill that is going to allow you to get so much more out of life. So I just figured I'd share that with you guys because, it was on my mind. And I know there's probably some other you out there who struggle with this sort of thing. Let's see who we got in here. Phil. What's up, Phil? How you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Let's see. All right. Next thing, speaking of the Super Bowl, is I wanted to say a little something about Kanye, because Kanye's been doing some stuff. And typically I don't like to give attention to like super topical things like this that are like viral and whatnot. But there's just like one little piece that is, I think, important for like any guy who's serious about pursuing his best life should take kind of seriously. And so like, let's just cover the backstory here, right? Obviously Kanye West is a guy who's been, very famous, very rich, up and down, potential mental health issues, says some crazy stuff, whatever. Recently, he's been going on a bit of a tear, basically making his wife go outside naked. On the Super Bowl, he paid however many millions of dollars to get an ad, and it was just an iPhone video of him. And from what I read, he directed all the people to his website, which only had a shirt with a Nazi symbol on it. And then he was posting literal porn online. So all of these things I find pretty reprehensible. It's pretty bad stuff. But I want to look at it at like a bigger meta thing, because really what Kanye's doing here, it's a symptom of a much bigger issue. And that is being an internet attention whore. And why do I want to even give these guys attention? Well, I don't. That's kind of the point. But you have to be able to call them out like in your own situation, and you got to remove them from your sphere of your own like information bubble. Okay. Because what I've found is that, I'm a relatively disciplined guy, but if I have someone who's an attention whore and I let them float around in my algorithm, they will keep hijacking my attention, because we're naturally curious creatures, right? We naturally have people that like, if they press the right buttons, well, then we get interested in it. That's why clickbait works, because we've got these lower primal instincts, and they're pretty easy to engineer once you understand the game. And someone like Kanye, he really understands the game. And if I was going to step back and look at it just from like an attention grabbing standpoint, he's kind of a master at it, right? Like he can generate attention on demand, but the ways in which he does it are terrible. And I would say they lead to terrible ends. Okay. And there's going to be a lot of people like that in your life. And so like, for example, if there's someone that I follow, and maybe I follow them on X or whatever, say it's a woman, and say she's got some good things to say, but she also likes to drop thirst trap pictures and things like that, I'm just going to unfollow. I don't want any of that shit in my sphere. And I think like people like that, they're always going to get attention. You can't, I have no illusions that talking about this sort of thing is going to convince the world to stop falling for clickbait. But I think I can hopefully convince a few of you guys. Like, you want to be looking at all of your relationships and paying attention to what the red flags are, right? Like there are some relationships that are just not worth having. And in this online world, we make a lot of relationships. Every time we follow someone or subscribe somewhere, we're making another little thing that, while it's not as serious as a real relationship, it's something that populates those algorithms that hijack so much of our attention. And so be intentional about who you follow. And as soon as someone starts doing like bullshit stuff, cut them out of your life. They have nothing to offer you, in most cases. And even if they do, it's not worth the potential for them to hijack your attention and pull it toward dumb crap. Okay. Like as soon as I'm following someone, like sometimes I'll follow someone on X for news, and then they post some kind of misleading clickbait headline, unfollowed, not interested anymore. And so don't give people second chances with this stuff. At least in general, maybe you can give them a few chances, but if it's big enough and egregious enough, just block them. They're cancer. Okay. Now I want to start getting into something a little bit more interesting here. There's a thread or a post on X that is really getting a heck of a lot of attention. And it started with this one here, where the religious hippie posted, ban porn everywhere. And you see it got, 1.2 million views, over 9,000 likes. And so, we got people saying yes, no, whatever. Now, what do I think about this? I don't necessarily think porn should be banned. I still have this libertarian bent to me where it's like, if I actually got to decide how things go, I would say most things are legal, even drugs, not obviously hurting other people or anything like that, but like voluntary activities, I think they should be legal, but I think they should be properly restricted. Like, yeah, don't ban porn, but make sure you got to know what you're doing with it. Like you have to, have the ID. You've got to like maybe be, I don't know, all the porn has to be vetted that's being made. It can't be like if you host any stuff that's like hasn't been proven that there was no trafficking or whatever involved, like serious like, penalties and fines. Like in general though, it's like, I don't think like trying to prevent people from making decisions is the right thing. But regardless, porn sucks and access should not be easy. Okay. And obviously anyone who does bad stuff with porn should be blocked off. But the main point that I brought up this tweet was because of a quote tweet from it that got even more attention, where Uncharted Father says, majority of porn would vanish if wives lost weight and were their husband's personal porn star. Okay. And so this one got 3.7 million views, 12K likes, and then a bunch of quote tweets, which we'll look at here in a moment. We got people agreeing with it, like saying, oh, women don't want to hear that. And then you got someone here saying 90% of OnlyFans subs are married men. The call is coming from inside the house, ladies. And, Rebecca here, she's got an interesting point. This is such a juvenile take. Wives are not porn stars. If you want porn star, then get a porn star. Secondly, men are turning their wives down so they can watch porn instead. So, it's one of these things where people seem to be very split on this. Obviously, a lot of people agree with it, and we've got a lot of people pushing back from it. Here we got Lasta, aka GIF. He's a friend of the channel, one of my long-term friends, former client, and he's got some interesting stuff to say about this as well. But I agree with him. Porn isn't a substitute for sex with your wife, because really I think that porn is something entirely different, and men use it for an entirely different reason. Primarily, the reason why guys turn to porn is because they want to escape reality. It's not that they're so horny most of the time. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to run away from pain. They have unmet desires inside of them. And while you might say, oh, well, yeah, their wife's not sleeping with them, so they use porn. Yes, maybe. That could be one of the unmet desires. But what I've found through working with literally like thousands of guys now at this point, helping them quit porn, often raw sexual desire is not the reason why guys use porn. It's really not. What it is that they are maybe lonely or stressed or, anxious, or they are feeling like they're not making progress in their career, or they're overwhelmed, or they lack clarity in their life. And so they feel bored and lacking direction. And all these things, they bubble up as discomfort. And as that discomfort rises, they just get into the habit of making it all go away with porn. And so when guys say like, oh, porn would disappear, the majority of porn would vanish if wives lost weight and when their husband's a personal porn star, okay, you could maybe say that. I don't know. I mean, probably would it reduce porn? Yes. But what he's saying is wives should become men's escape mechanisms. Wives should become the male security blanket so that instead of having to turn to porn to make himself feel better about all the things that he's struggling with in his life, he can just turn to his wife who would, willingly embrace him. And so what really the way I see this guy's tweet is it's pretty much like him saying that wives should be sex robots. They should be, functional fleshlights. And I don't agree with that. I think that that's a pretty messed up way to look at it. And it wouldn't actually get at the core issue that guys are looking for, because guys are looking to solve their desires down at their core. And yes, is there issues between men and women today? 100%. So I want to look at some of the quote tweets of this, and let's see what we see there before I give you my take. The majority of porn would vanish if porn watchers pluck their eyes out, actually. True. Yeah, majority of men stop watching porn. Yes. Porn would disappear if men led their homes in the way that they're supposed to. Yes, I could see an argument for that. Like, if men were, raising good daughters, is there a chance that there would be less daughters making OnlyFans content and porn and that sort of thing? Yeah, probably. Just shoot that guy. Guy has a porn addiction along with no respect for women. I'm not going to make that accusation, but he's thinking like a porn user. Porn star is a prostitute paid to degrade themselves for the entertainment of degenerates. Any man expecting such a thing from their wife does not deserve one and shouldn't be anywhere near their children. Now, to the defense of the guy who made the original post, I think it's right for a man to want a vibrant, passionate sexual relationship with his wife. I think that's a totally reasonable and desire, and you'd kind of be crazy if you didn't want that. But it's kind of comes with the, like, what can we actually expect in a proper and healthy way? The way I see it is that men and women, when it comes to sex, they're looking for kind of two different things, particularly in the modern sphere, right? Like, you can get real cynical and be like, well, women are looking for security and money, and men are looking for just the hottest thing to get them off, okay? Yeah, there's some kind of like primal level of that stuff at play, and the less kind of developed you are, the more that's the case. Doesn't really go away even if you get more developed. Like, of course, a guy still wants to have an attractive wife, and of course, a woman still wants money and security, okay? But that's not the whole thing. I wouldn't even say that's the lion's share of it when you're dealing with a generally good guy and a generally good woman. I think what the real kind of friction point between men and women today is that women, they want emotional connection, and men want access. They want respect. They want that, they want that relief, right? And so the problem is when online, they're only pointing out how the other side is failing to meet their side of the bargain. And anyone who wants to just like go in and say that like the key is just dominate women and to do like to learn how to manipulate them, red pill them to death, that sort of thing. Yes, you might be able to have a lot of sex that way, but you're most likely not going to get love or connection or someone you genuinely even really like. And so if you're fine with trying to be the most alpha red pill, Andrew Tate of the world, well then, great, go for it. You might be able to pull it off. Probably not, but maybe. But if you want something a little bit more real, you want something a little more connected, someone that you can really raise children with and build a loving household with, well, there's going to have to be a compromise on both sides. Both men, both women, and women are going to have to meet in the middle. Women are going to have to understand, all right, a man has strong sexual desire. How can we make him happy? And the man has to understand, all right, a woman has strong emotional desires. How can I make her happy? And the key is for both of them to do it in a way where it's dignified, where like, yes, they might be, making some sacrifices here and there. Like you might be having to, eat some stuff as a man to make sure that your wife's happy or feeling secure or feeling like she can relax. Like you might have to do some extra chores. You might need to butter her up. You might need to extend the foreplay. Okay. Like all these kinds of things that maybe a man might not want to do immediately. You should do it because you love her and you want to make it more enjoyable for her. Likewise, a wife's going to have to do some stuff too. And the big thing though is just recognizing that it's okay to draw the line, right? It's okay to like not bend over backwards and go into a state of subservience, because this is where I think it gets so messy and mixed up, where guys expect women to completely submit to them. And women, they kind of had to do that for a long time historically. And then now with the feminist wave movement, like things kind of reversed, and we're living in a cycle where the feminists of today is like, no, men should submit to women. And we've got people playing both sides of this thing. And the reality is stop doing this like crazy, like master slave dynamic, and just like practice loving each other, like meet in good faith, and you can figure this out. And, it can be a little tricky to figure out how to do this right as a man, because you're taught a lot of bad stuff. So if you're interested in more of my takes on intersexual dynamics, check out my Red Pill Playbook playlist that I've got on my channel, because I think that that'll hold some really interesting insight for any of you guys who are struggling with women. Thanks, Film Ninja. Sub Jose. Barry says, good evening, Mark. Good timing. Been watching a Reboot Timeline. It's brilliant. Awesome. Good. I'm glad you liked that one. Yeah, I thought that was going to be a pretty useful one. He's also been listening to your Brain on Porn audiobook. Absolutely fascinating material. Cool. Oh, yeah. I did a chat with Gary Wilson. He was the creator of it. And yeah, he sadly passed, but yeah, I had a good interview with him previously. So definitely check that out. He's kind of like the OG that really helped inspired me to quit porn and that sort of thing. All right. So next thing here. I wanted to watch this video because it came out, and I was looking at stuff with Pavel anyway. So I'll get into the next section when I start talking about like the rugged productivity stuff. But I was looking up Pavel Tsatsouline, and I'll explain why later, but he's like a big guy in kettlebells and strength training and that sort of thing. And I just saw that he had an interview with Andrew Huberman, which I'm absolutely going to watch because the dude's really smart. And he's kind of transformed from this like over the top, kind of like cringy marketer. Like go back and watch like old classic Pavel commercials for his training programs. It's honestly hilarious. He's kind of the guy who popularized kettlebells in the United States. But he's also now transformed into like really smart dude. Well, I guess he's always been a really smart dude, but now he's really leaning on the scientific end of things. And so he had a video, I saw a clip with him and Huberman where they're talking about training to gain energy and avoiding brain fog. So let's watch this together.
A lot of people who would like to train more for strength, train more often for strength, do strength and endurance work. The challenge sometimes isn't just scheduling it, it's that we feel depleted and tired afterward. Have you observed this? And is there a way to use strength training or other forms of training to improve cognitive function? Because I
really like this question. Like this is something that I've dealt with, like I love to train hard, but like often after I train hard, I'm just wiped. It's like I have a very cognitively intense job, and it's like, it's really tough if I just like kill it in the gym. I'm like, I'm dragging the rest of the day. The idea of sitting down and creating content or coaching someone or doing a stream like this, it feels very difficult. So this is something that I'm really interested to hear his response on.
As you pointed out, only compromises, not solutions. But I do see a world in which one could use their physical training to give them for lack of a better word, a boost into the day. So you're getting stronger, you're developing your health, and you're also able to then lean into your day with more focus and intention. That would be the ultimate scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's obviously, we're looking at a zero-sum game. So you only have so much, your resources are limited. One thing that will absolutely help is fragmentation. It's been proven that dividing up a given workload into smaller chunks allows you, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's endurance training or strength training or some cognitive work, you're able to do more. And that's one thing to consider. The other is obviously the feedback. You have to listen to your body pretty much. Soviets stressed very much that you have to take the cybernetic approach. You have to have the feedback. No matter what the training plan says, Arkady Vorobyov says you have to listen to that feedback. And
this is something that I've found to be huge. So like my favorite training program that I've ever done now is just trying to train every single day, and I literally just do whatever I want. And I've done so many different like training programs now. Like I've done, powerlifting programs. I've done like a long period of 5-3-1, if you're familiar with that. I've done intense kettlebell sport training. I did track practices. I did, I've done different kinds of hard style stuff like Pavel's done, like his programs. And I like know how to make a workout now. And just being able to like do whatever my body feels like it needs that day has been so freeing. So it's interesting to hear him say that, because that's what I found allows me to kind of maximize intensity without having that kind of like follow-up fatigue.
Freshness in the Soviet system of strength training, and not just in weightlifting, freshness was paramount. It's even better. Let's talk about how track athletes in the Soviet Union trained for strength, and that will be even more applicable to a lot of the listeners, because they definitely didn't spend 2.5 hours in the gym. So Professor Vladimir Dyachkov, he was a head coach, and he was one of the first to implement heavy lifting for the track.
I don't think he said a real name there. That was crazy. Is that actually what Russian sounds like?
So Professor Vladimir Dyachkov, he was a head coach, and he was one of the first to implement heavy lifting for the track.
Wouldn't that be hilarious if he's just literally like making up names? I've heard people say that, like, some people don't like Pavel. They think he's kind of like a con man and he makes stuff up. And it would be hysterical if he literally because he always pulls his research from like these supposed like Russian research archives, and no one can read Russian. Supposedly he can. So that's a theory that he just makes all this shit up. But I've seen good results with this stuff.
Right after the Soviets decide, hey, look at these Americans, lifting heavy weights, Bruce Randall and Paul Anderson and Canadian Doug Hepburn. So these lifters, he says, always do low reps. So they would never do more than 3-4 reps, even with the lightest weight, even with the warm-up weight. They spent a lot of time doing just singles and doubles, and it was absolutely essential that they stayed fresh. And part of it was just how they felt. Part of it is the performance, how well they jumped and so on, and how they felt after. So they found if you're really obsessive about it, you have that tonic effect that lasts at least until the next day. And the tonic effect is both for your strength, for your power, but also for your cognitive functions as well.
I can see that. That's like just kind of like never really frying yourself. And it sounds like he's probably going to talk about like frequency here as well. But like I've seen this before. Like he's got this famous program that he developed with Dan John called Easy Strength, where the idea was you just kind of like the initial idea was like, hey, just deadlift like every single day or something like that, and just don't do it. Never deadlift, bench press, and some other kind of move. He had Dan John do this, who's another famous strength coach, and he just like do relatively light effort, but do them every single day. Like never be straining or beating yourself up any session. And just try and do it with frequency. And by the end of the month, Dan John hit a new PR almost without even trying. And I've seen the same sort of thing myself. Like when I would do a frequency-based program where I was just like lifting regularly, doing the same things at like a high frequency, not necessarily high intensity, I saw like that's how I got my best bench press. I was able to do like 275 for 3 reps at the end of that program, when before that I could barely do 275 for 1 rep. I was kind of blown away. But
it's also very, very interesting that, here's an idea, Do a bench press before the next day before you're competing in a jump, or do a heavy squat the day before you're competing as a thrower. So it's very interesting how the opposite part of the body stimulating that was very, very helpful. Very interesting phenomena. So
I think there's something to that too, like just in terms of the different poles of like human nature. Like he's talking here just purely about exercises, how like, doing a deep squat or a deadlift before you go and do a jump, it's kind of like a similar sort of movement. It'll actually help you rather than inhibit doing that thing. But I think that it goes beyond that in terms of kind of like directionality in all parts of life. Like when you have a better social life, chances are your creative work will get better too. Like if I keep my exercise going, my ability to focus, as long as it's not too heavy, is able to improve as well. And really it's just like, it's what people always talk about. It's like balance, and figuring out what the right kind of balance is for you. It's like if you really want to maximize one thing in your life and you want it to be sustainable, it's like you can either go the path of becoming an extreme robot, or you could go to the path of figuring out what kind of holistic life balance best supports that like focused optimization. So yeah.
So they found if the strength work is familiar and non-exhaustive, it absolutely facilitates whatever it is that you do afterwards. And restricting, this is where track athletes were very different from.
All right, he's probably going to get more into the sciencey stuff. I'll probably watch that more later, but that's interesting. Thanks for watching with me. Let's see what people saying in the chat here. Jennifer Duran, in reference to that porn tweet, she's saying some men were telling women on X that they were reading too deep into the phrase. But let's be honest, that's something a porn addict would say, and women don't like needy men. I'd agree with that. Yeah. Ever done a martial art? Not seriously. I was like too violent as a kid. I probably would have made me less violent, but my parents were worried it would make me more violent and like more effective. So when I got more time, I would like to try some jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. I think I would, at least learn the basics of that. Filmmaker says MMA coach Firas Zahabi talks a lot about this too. Something like you should never be sore in order to maintain a high training frequency and avoid injuries. I would agree with that. And like, I would say that applies again across domains. Like, I could grind out 6 hours of like working on content in one day. That's a pretty intense dive for me, maybe even 7 if I'm like really in the flow. But I'm going to struggle the next few days. I might struggle for the next like week, to really get into it. Cause it's like, there's something to be said. Like if you like drill certain groove, like too deep, you're going to feel it. And so like, you're going to find that, obviously you can increase your amount of focus time. Like I can easily do 3 hours of content every day, during the work week. That could be 15 hours. So it's like I could do 15 hours if I go a little bit easier during the day and go higher consistency, or I could do 7 hours in one day if I absolutely have to. So yeah, like just learn how to feel this stuff out and you'll be able to tell it in yourself. But the worst thing to do is just to assume that you're some kind of robot with unlimited capacity and to just like think you can just keep frying and grinding yourself into making success. Jose says, is porn addiction and, ACT Podcast asked first, what about the intellectual competence? I'm not sure what that was in reference to. Jose says, porn addiction and sex addiction are the same, or does it go hand in hand? They're kind of different. It's like, first of all, there's different kinds of sex addicts. You've got the people who are just like, they're just there to bang. And then you've got the love addicts who also could be, present as sex addicts, but they're more attached to the emotional high. And for a lot of these kinds of guys, the reason why they're addicted is because they're addicted to that kind of status hit of like, hey, I'm getting laid, or hey, I'm getting attention from women. And that like real world kind of affirmation to them is like their drug that soothes them. With porn addiction, it's a similar mechanism. Obviously, it's virtual, and that makes it a little bit different because the access is just so ubiquitous and easy. So dealing with it's a little bit different. And then also, I would say guys who a lot of times it might be less sexual in nature. I know porn is obviously inherently sexual, but for a lot of guys who are addicted to porn, like I was saying earlier, their addiction has nothing to do with sex, and it has everything to do with just like these unmet desires in their life where they're not, getting the connection, the progress, the health, the, whatever, the peace of mind that they really want. And so they use porn to substitute that. How Elon Musk do not struggle. I'm not sure what you're talking about. So anyway, let's talk about this. All right. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's the ways? Let's try and redo this for the video version of this. Okay. So now we're going to get into the next episode of the Rugged Productivity series. And this one, I think, is a very important one. And it's all about setting up your rugged rep scheme. So we all know we got to do the reps, right? We've heard it over and over again. It's just get out there and do the reps. There's that famous study where it's the speed at which an artist improves. And they had two groups. One where it's just they gave someone, a certain amount of time to make one little sculpture the best that they could. And then they had the other group make a ton of those little sculptures and just make them quick. And it turns out the people who did a bunch of reps, they actually improved much faster than the one who was just trying to make one perfect one. Okay. And so this applies to pretty much everything in life. You got to learn how to just crank out the reps. And so I want to walk you through a process here because chances are there's some area in your life where if you just start doing the reps, you're going to see massive improvements to your life. All right. So step number one, pick an area that's important to you. What is it? Where is some area where you want to see massive progress? Okay. For me, one of those areas is on social media. And so for me, one of those things is particularly streaming. Okay. And so what you want to find then, once you find an area, is you want to find an intersection point between low risk, relatively low effort, and high long-term gain. So you're trying to find something where, if you do it, you're not doing something dangerous, right? You're not making $1 million investment. All right. You're not playing with stuff that if it goes wrong, really bad things could happen to you. Okay. Next, it should be something relatively easy to do. All right. It shouldn't be something that requires you to be at maximum level 10 effort in order to get it done. Okay. And then finally, it should offer high long-term gain. All right. It should be, so if I do this thing a lot, is there a good chance that really good things will happen to me? And when you can find this, you can start crafting your rugged rep scheme. Basically, here's what I'm going to just show up and do. And I'm going to give you some examples of what this might of what these things could look like. And then I'm going to talk about 3 keys that will make doing this and following this a lot easier. So examples of a rugged rep scheme. For me, doing this stream today, because this week was crazy. I had so much stuff to do in terms of my business. There's things that were, kind of all over the place. And then on top of that, my daughter got sick. She's home from school. It threw off my whole schedule. I wasn't even going to do a stream. I didn't have it all promoted. I didn't, send out messages to you guys. So, like I said to you guys tuning in, great. Thank you for being here. And I was like, it's not going to be perfect. I don't have enough time to prep for it. I'm just not going to do it. And then I was like, you know what? Is this what happens if I do it and it's not the most amazing stream in the world? What happens? Okay. It's low risk. The very worst cases, I just, end the stream or I just delete the video afterwards. I'm not going to do that because I think it's been pretty good. Okay. So it was low risk. All right. Low effort. I put probably, 30 minutes or so prepping for this because that's all the time I had. It was either that or do nothing. Right. And then does this have an opportunity for long-term gain? Yes, especially since, I'm working on plans to get the stuff broken down, turn into micro content. great stuff for the business side of things and trying to reach more guys with my message. Okay. So for me, my big rugged rep is doing at least one live stream a week. And I know if I keep doing that, maybe eventually become two, and the streams will increase in quality. And then, the audience will grow, business will thrive. I'm helping more people, they're getting this network effect, all this awesome stuff, right? So massive upside. So that for me is a great example of a rugged rep. Now, another one, all right, say it's a fitness goal. Scott Adams, he has, I think he did the best version of this that I'd heard. He's the creator of Dilbert, if you're not familiar with him, the comic strip, but he's also now become kind of like a online pundit or whatever. His thing was, I'm going to go to the gym. And it wasn't like I'm going to go to the gym and work out. It's just like, I'm going to go to the gym. And I think it was every day, or maybe it was like a certain number of times a week. And so he goes to the gym every day. And the thing is, he doesn't put any pressure on himself to actually work out. But he's found that almost all of the time when he does go to the gym, he does work out and he's happier for it. His rugged rep is literally just getting the clothes on and going there. But he also says that there's a couple times a year where he goes to the gym, he walks inside, and he turns right back around and he walks out because he's just not feeling it that day. But he maintains the consistency, and he gets great results. I mean, he's in surprisingly good shape for his age. Another one, and this is why I was looking up Pavel Tsatsouline earlier, because he has got a concept of like greasing the groove, easy strength. And so it's like this idea of just frequency of like, semi-effortful reps that you kind of do regularly. So one way you can do it with push-ups. You put that, push-up bar in your door, you walk through it, and you just do 1 or 2 push-ups or 3 or 4, like whatever kind of gets you to medium level effort. By the end of the week, if you keep doing that, you're going to get a lot of extra reps and you're going to get stronger, right? So that's like fitness stuff, and that stuff's pretty easy and straightforward. But, what about for more complex stuff, okay? What about for relationship things? Well, example would be anytime you see a pretty woman and it wouldn't be a risky situation to approach her, you approach her. That's it. You approach her and you try and talk to her and you try and get her number. I mean, like, guys think, like, this is one of these things where I'll get into the keys that guys really overthink, but just approach any woman you think's pretty. That's like kind of like in your potential bracket of being able to date. That's it. Maybe it's just hitting on your wife. Maybe that's what you want to improve your relationship with your wife. Well, then try and talk with her, flirt with her. It's low risk. All right. It's easy. It doesn't take that much. Just like make it a thing. Maybe it's at a certain time every day you do it, and she starts, expecting it, and you guys make a game out of it. You have some kind of new corny pickup line you try on her or something like that. Okay. Like, just, it doesn't need to be a big deal. Just something. Does it make you directional progress? Well, then just start freaking doing it. I mean, maybe it's a professional thing where you're just going to be DMing someone in your network. That's it. You just like scroll your friends list on LinkedIn. I don't know if LinkedIn even calls it a friends list. I don't use LinkedIn, but assuming you do, you just find someone in your niche and you just scroll their profile, you DM them, and you say something about something they posted recently. Boom. It took you like a few seconds, and maybe it creates a new professional opportunity for you. All right. Whatever it is, wherever you're trying to improve in your life, I guarantee you'd be able to find some spot where you can make consistent, rugged reps that are going to be pretty easy and compound into something really awesome over time. Now, even when people like have a good idea for this sort of thing, they really struggle to follow through with it. And so there's like 3 big things that are going to help you overcome it. And the first, absolute biggest one is stop overthinking it. Like, literally actually shut your brain off and just do the thing. Just stop thinking. Like, I've spent a lot of time in my career trying to help guys figure out what to think. And I think there's a lot of, there is for certain a lot of power to that. Mindset is insanely valuable. But sometimes the most powerful mindset is no mindset. Stop fucking thinking. All right. Like, if I just sat there and hemmed and hawed over whether I was going to do this stream, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now, because I would come up with a million reasons as to why it wouldn't be good enough, or I'd be, overthinking the outline and get to the point where I ran out of time for the day and I wasn't gonna be able to do it because I got calls tomorrow, like all this kind of shit. Okay. And I was just like, I'm going to caveman it. Sometimes you just need to caveman it. Sometimes you just need to stop thinking, go over and talk to the girl. Sometimes you need to stop thinking, go and like, whatever it is, just go for the walk. Just do some push-ups. Who cares about the rep scheme? Just do something. Stop thinking. If you can learn how to stop thinking, then you can actually start doing in a lot of cases. Next big point is as soon as guys start hearing this, I've seen this with guys with the slight edge who have been into that sort of stuff, or like tiny habits and this kind of stuff. And then they'll read these books, they'll get all inspired, like, oh yeah, these little tiny things compounded over time, they lead to massive results. And it's like, that's true. But then they make a list of like 30 of these little things and they try and do them all. They have this massive spreadsheet of all the things that they're trying to do every single day. Don't do that. You're not going to do it. It's not going to work. You're going to pretty much just, flounder and, flame out, and you'll be done within a couple of days because it's just too much shit. Because when you have too many of those little reps, eventually it becomes a really big set and it's too much for you to keep up with. Okay. So keep it to like one thing at first until you feel like it's second nature. All right. And once it's second nature, maybe you add another one. I would keep it to like 3 that you're really paying attention to, but they shouldn't be added all at once. All right. Especially if they're like larger things that like, have more significant impact. So just keep it focused, because as soon as you add a second thing, your focus goes from 100% on the one to just now 50% on that one and then 50% on the other one. And you've just literally cut your focus and therefore likely your follow through in half. So start with 1. And then the third key, which might be the most important one, is you got to celebrate the win. When you do the rep, pat yourself on the shoulder. Let yourself feel good. Cheer yourself on. Give yourself an ooh-yop. All right? For those of you who don't know, ooh-yop is the frontline man war cry of unleash your apex potential. And it's also a thing that we yell when we're celebrating, when we are congratulating ourselves. Feel free to use that one if you would like. Make yourself feel good. So many guys, they trap themselves in this insane situation where if they do a good thing, they tell themselves, well, I should have done that anyway. So there's no reason for me to feel good about it. This is something that I should just be doing no matter what. And so just me doing it is just me meeting requirements. And in fact, I'm kind of pissed that I did it because it reminded me that I'm only meeting requirements and not exceeding them. And so it's like guys will trap themselves in this situation where even if they're doing good things, they're not allowed to feel good. And that is a guaranteed recipe for hating discipline. Okay. And hilariously enough, when guys do this, on the flip side, if they do something wrong, they are more than happy to shit on themselves and beat themselves up like mercilessly. So stop that. Okay. We want to celebrate our wins. I call this win conditioning. We're literally trying to train our minds to create a new dopaminergic pathway. Because like the way the brain works is that in order for a new habit to be formed, there has to be a cue, a trigger, an action, and a reward. Like a cue, action, and a reward. All right. And as long as we have those 3 things, then we can form a habit. Now, the problem, like the reason why so many guys can't form new habits is because they'll have the cue. It's like, oh, it's time to work out. They'll have the action. They work out. And then they don't give themselves any reward. They like are just waiting for like the body transformation that happens 6 months from now. All right. If they're waiting that long, guess what? They're probably going to abandon their goal before they reach there unless they get some other kind of affirmation. And you can like add your own affirmation by just like, patting yourself on the shoulder and feeling good about it, celebrating it. Okay. Like it's crazy. Like, yes. Can you train a dog like with treats? Absolutely. You can give them a little treat. But you can also train a dog with affection. You can cheer them on. You can pat them on the head. And guess what? The limbic system of our brain is very similar to a dog's brain, and we respond the same way. So if you can affirm yourself, then you can gain a tremendous amount of control over what sort of habits you form. And so particularly for these rugged reps, whenever you bang one out, celebrate yourself. Be happy for yourself. All right. So yeah, that's the big idea for today. And if you guys want more ideas on how you can improve your self-development, develop better self-mastery, become more disciplined, all this other kind of stuff, and you want to do it in a way that doesn't require white knuckle willpower, then make sure you click the link in the description, because in it, I give you a free training that'll really help you with all that kind of stuff that I've used with hundreds of guys now to get some of the best results I've seen in my 10 years of coaching, guys. So, definitely check that out. See what people are saying. All right. Okay, guys. Well, like I said, this stream was kind of thrown together at the last minute, so it's not going to be a super long one. If anyone's got any questions here, I can hang out here for a few minutes with you, but let's see what we can get. That podcast that says if the reward is too big, the pleasure of the action of itself will fade and be conditional to that. That is something that can happen. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes people who get successful actually deal with this, maybe they started something because they loved it. Like they started music because they loved it, and then they became famous. And then all of a sudden the music itself stopped driving them because they focused more on the fame and the money. And then once they stop love making the music, then it becomes kind of like this really painful cycle where they have to keep doing something that they're no longer even connected to because they've kind of lost their way. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate the kind words. Oh, I understand what Act was saying earlier about Elon Musk. How does he not struggle? I have no idea. I mean, he's not a typical guy. Obviously, he's an extreme outlier. And I think it's kind of dangerous to try and model people who are obviously extreme outliers, because what works for them just won't work for you because they're literally built different. I mean, he actually is neurodivergent, I believe the politically correct term is. I think he's, what is it? Asperger's maybe, or some level of autistic. I know he's got something. I don't know the exact proper terminology for it, but literally his brain works a little bit differently. Okay. At the very least. So, and probably a lot differently in certain ways. So when it comes to selecting people to look at, who I always want to learn from is the guy who, one, struggled with the exact same problem I'm trying to solve. And he struggled with it a lot. He didn't just sort of struggle with it. He really struggled with it. And then he got better, he stayed good, and also he's helped other people do the same thing. Because if you can do all of those things, then you've got something that probably works for a lot of people and is probably really solid. So those are the kinds of people that I always try to look at when I'm understanding self-improvement stuff. And my next stream, I think what I'm going to do is look at the differing opinions out there on morning routines, because there's a lot of wild shit going on in that whole sphere. And it's become almost a meme of these crazy morning routines that people are doing. So, it's what that, multi-billionaire biohacker is doing in his morning routine is probably not who you should be looking at for what you should do. Shosha says, can you talk about activities you do to relax? Yeah. I'll play sometimes I'll play low-key video games. I don't do, for me, that's anything non-competitive. If I play a competitive video game, I get addicted. But something chill, I can do that for just a little bit, pick it up, put it down, no big deal. Or I'll do it with my brothers. Have fun doing that. Another thing is I'll watch shows with my wife. I like playing music. I'm into synthesizers and stuff and composing songs and that sort of thing. I love walking. I just love walking outside. It's one of my favorite things, and it's such a simple pleasure, but man, it changes my day when I get outside. Me on the computer, it's easy for me to be inside all day, but just walking in some pretty nature, I love that. I also pray a lot. I say a rosary every single day. And one of my things, honestly, is I like to go to bed early sometimes and just lie in bed and think. I really like that. So those are kind of like my main big ones, and I work out too, which aids in relaxation. Jeremiah says, Elon is an alien, can't compare ourselves to him. Yeah. Sup, E-Gold? Act says, how did you start the first phase of 8 days in your right now streak? Did you cut the digital world and internet in full term? I mean, that was in 2012. So I don't remember exactly. I did not go through, I didn't use any porn blockers. I know that. I didn't do any kind of like severe like internet restriction. Like I was so like caveman kind of at the time. Not fully caveman, because I had been studying self-development for a long time at that point, and I was literally a, certified coach at that point too. I'd done like a lot of like serious self-development work, so I knew some stuff. But I didn't know anything really about the process of quitting porn, because a lot of that hadn't really been developed. It was just like the science was being discovered, like the neuroscience, like the Gary Wilson kind of stuff was being discovered at that time. So like my core strategy was like praying every day, playing video games when I got horny, and then when I was like too horny or felt too crappy to even do that, I would just like lie on my bed and go, ah! And so I got through like that, thank God. But there's much better ways to do it, for sure. And so if you watch my last stream, I go into exactly what you should be focusing on in the first week. So I would definitely check that one out. Jeremiah says, I got a Game Boy replica that has some old Game Boy and PlayStation games on it. It's fun, but easier to put away than modern games, to me anyway. That's a smart move, man. I like that, Sometimes that's the way to go. Like, in a lot of ways, like, our entertainment's, like, almost gotten too good. I found this with, I've read a lot of fiction. I love, like, sci-fi, fantasy kind of stuff. And certain authors have just kind of cracked the formula. Well, actually, a lot of authors now. Like, there's a formula out there that can hook in people's minds, and it can make them like just want to binge stuff. And I got to be careful. Like when I'm reading something and I can tell that author knows that formula, then I sometimes I'll just turn it off right then, because I don't want to be like I'm the kind of guy who will start a series and say it's got like 25 episodes. I'll spend 2 days watching all of them so I can get it done and get back to life. And like, I don't always do that, but like, that's the compulsion there, because I can easily get hooked into things that are, on my wavelength. So yeah, like sometimes like the modern stuff, it's just too dialed in. It's just like, this ain't your grandpa's weed. This is like the new like GMO modified in a lab, like crazy crystallized crap that just like hits so much harder. And speaking of weed, I mean, yeah, it applies to video games, it applies to books, it applies to actual drugs today. Like things have been made so hyper palatable to our dopamine receptors that sometimes things are just too fun, and you got to like decide like, all right, I'm just going to cut out that level of fun so that I can just like actually still make progress in life. Our podcast says, what is your advice for a person that's struggling to get out of 2 to 3 days and working through 3 years nonstop, failing each time in a new way, and the subconscious is shaping as helpless? Try my program, probably. That'd be the number one thing, for sure. Jeremiah says, recently read Dune for the first time, and holy shit, it was so addictive. I was staying up till like 2 a.m. reading. I was happy when I finished reading it. Yeah, like it's like those hero's journey kind of things for a lot of guys. That's where they get hooked. The power fantasy, that's what gets me. I'll still fall for that in certain animes and things like that. But as a kid, it was I was a sucker for those. All right, I think I got to get going here, my friends. But it was great chatting with you. I'm gonna try and get things much more kind of like smooth and automated, hopefully even get like a standardized streaming time going out. And I want to be starting to stream on other platforms as well. It's just, this kind of thing is big thing for me right now is just get the content out, and then we'll be, we'll be refining this process. But I want to be doing more of the streaming. I really like doing it, like interacting with all of you, and it's really fun. So, yeah. All right, my friends, I'll catch you later. Ooh, yeah.